No, I'm not on click to go live, my friend. I'm live. So, hey everybody, I hope you can hear me. Um, Apologies for a few technical hitches here and there, but I'm glad that we have begun. If you can hear me, I can see Joel Mark was saying no. If you can hear me, you can test. You can tell me whether you can hear me. I can see Joel Mark on the line. I can see Joyce on the line. Maybe anyone who can tell me whether they can hear me. Then we can commence our class. Yes, I see Joel Mark saying it's good now. Thank you so much for waiting. I do apologize for the slight 10-minute delay. Once in a while, you can get a bit of technical issues, but it's good that we are here. And thank you so much for joining, whether you're watching us live today or you'll watch this after. I do know there are some of us who've said they will join. They might not be able to watch at the moment, but they will be able to join us a little bit later. So if you'll be watching us a little bit later, most welcome. If you're watching us live, most welcome. The purpose of this stream came from the Kenya Keyboardists group. I think they had requested if I could take them through the class. They had requested if we can do an online music class. And so what we will do, I will have to break this class probably into 2 classes, just because I might bombard everyone with a lot of information. So what we will do is we'll probably break this into 2 classes so that then we can see how much of the basics of music we can do, and so that then we can probably move in a good pace rather than trying to rush through the entire content. So we will begin. My name is Mark Kiambo. For those who do not know me, I am a producer right here in Nairobi, Kenya. I run a studio, Zamar Studios Limited. This is where we are running the stream from this evening, right here in Nairobi, Kenya. I wear many hats. I am a producer. That's what I mainly do. I also consult on a couple of things financial, things IT, things music production, things audio, and I'm also a teacher. I teach music. I teach production as well. And so I kind of wear many hats. I have done music for probably maybe 22 years now, since 1996. That is when I began my musical journey. Some of you might be trying to calculate my age, but yeah, I have played music ever since, and I'm always glad to share the information that I have gathered over this period of time. So welcome. I will do it in kind of a presentation, but we'll keep switching between the presentation and the actual demonstration. I might show things on the piano just to go through the teaching. So I ask that you will join me in this class. I guess we will begin the class, and we can proceed. So the entire 2 lessons, I'll break it into 2 lessons. We'll discuss what music is, the music alphabet, musical scales, musical notation, and then from the second class actually is where we will discuss musical notation, key signature, time signature, and formation of harmony. That is where we come into chords, and probably how we start using this in creating of music. Okay? So I'm sure everyone would be asking, what is music and how would we define music? And music ideally is just the art of arranging sounds in time. Okay? We use various elements, melody, harmony, rhythm, and timbre. This is what we'll be looking at in this class. But the most important thing to understand is that music is an art. It is not really a science. You could look at it as if it's a science, but music is really an art. And when you talk of art, we talk of creativity. When we talk of art, we talk of someone expressing themselves. You can do things in different formats. You don't have to do them in the very, very same formats. You know, in science, we say if a certain rule has to be met, if a certain rule applies, then that rule has to be met. That rule has got to apply for whatever, you know, in the same circumstance. In arts, you can actually change, because here you're bringing in your expression, your feelings, your creativity. And so music is actually an art. And what we do is that we arrange sound. Now, sound, if we look at sound, sound is really an energy wave that is being transmitted through a medium. It could be a solid, a liquid, or a gas. Mainly the sound that we tend to perceive is through air, which is a gas. And it is a pressure wave of sounds, of particles that are vibrating. And that vibration is what our ears will perceive as sound. Our ears, how God has created us, is that our ears will be able to get this sound, these vibrations, and then it transmits it to the brain, which is then decoded in our minds as sound. So a sound wave, what we as human beings call sound, is anything that is vibrating between 20 times per second. So if the particle is, oscillating or vibrating 20 times per second, that we call that 20 hertz, to around 20,000 times per second, that is 20,000 hertz or 20 kilohertz, our ears will be able to receive that, and it will be perceived as sound. So we will have to work with any vibration that is working between 20 hertz and 20,000 hertz for us to actually perceive that as sound. And then we will now segment those sounds into specifics, which we will now use to make our music. Okay? Well, there are two specific properties of sound. There are more than this, but the two specific ones that we will be interested in is amplitude, which means how far is the particle being displaced by the energy wave. And the bigger the displacement, the bigger the amplitude, and that results in volume. So if the displacement is great, then we will say our ears will hear that as a higher volume. If the displacement is less, then we will hear that as a lower volume. Okay? And then the other one is frequency. And frequency is the number of times that particle is oscillating per second. And our ears tend to hear those oscillations per second, which we call frequency, as pitch. So it's important for us to understand, because once we understand the difference between frequency and pitch, frequency and amplitude, frequency, we understand it as pitch, and amplitude, we understand it as volume. We will mainly use pitch in music because we use specific frequencies to make what we call notes. Okay? As I said, our human hearing is between 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. 20 hertz will be felt as deeper pitch, and as we move towards the higher frequencies, 20 kilohertz will be felt as a higher pitch or as a treble. The lower frequencies will be felt as bass frequencies. Okay? When we are discussing, or when we want to build music, we have to start with our building blocks. I always look at music as a language in which I will use specific sound pitches to make melodies, okay? To make my music. And so we will use specific frequencies, in this case, what we call specific pitches that we now know as musical notes. In the music alphabet, we have 12 notes, but they are named using 7 letters of the alphabet. This has always brought a bit of confusion. People say that we have 7 notes in the musical alphabet, but we actually have 12 notes in the musical alphabet. But we use 7 letters of the English alphabet, that is A, B, C, D, and E, and F. How many of those? A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Yeah, those 7 are the ones that we use, but we will name all the notes using those 7, the 12 notes using the 7. And how do we do that? This shows the 12 notes that we have in our musical alphabet. Okay, we have A sharp, B, C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G, and G sharp. Okay, those make the 12. You will notice that I have 2 lines, and just for the purposes of making this look a little bit neater for the presentation, but you can see that we have A sharp, can also be called B flat. Okay, A will be called A. A sharp is the same as B flat. So if I would show you on the keyboard, that is my note A. And then the next note, which is a black note, is going to be either A sharp or B flat. Okay? The next one is going to be B. Then we have C. We have C sharp. We have D. D sharp or E flat. E. We have F. We have F sharp. We have G. We have G sharp or A flat, and we come back to A. Those make our 12 notes of the alphabet, okay, of our musical alphabet. We will have the hash sign, people can call it hash or hashtag sign. In music, we call it the sharp sign. And what the sharp sign means is that you raise the pitch of a note by half, okay? And then we have the flat sign, which means you lower the pitch. So as we move right towards the piano, for example, we will call those, we will say we are sharpening as we move to the right of the piano, and as we move to the left of the piano, we will say we are flattening, or we are going lower in pitch, okay? So if I have my note A here, it means that if I move a half step, and we will look at this in a minute, if I move a half step to the right, I will have sharpened the note and made that A sharp or B flat. Okay, it's going to be called B flat because if I am here on my B and I move a little to the left and note down, that is going to be called B flat. So this note is going to be called either A sharp or B flat. Okay, this note is going to be called either A sharp or B flat. The same case as this note is going to be called either D sharp or D flat or C sharp. Okay, this is going to be called D sharp, C sharp, or D flat. So the black notes will be named from the white notes. So the white notes will have the regular English alphabet notes. So we'll have A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and A. Okay? The black notes will then now pick names, whether we are moving it up from a white note, so in this case that will be A sharp, or down, if I lower it, that is going to be called A flat. Okay? I hope that is clear. If it's not clear, you can write in the comments, and then I can repeat if something is not very clear. So these are the 12 notes that we use in our musical alphabet. Okay, so we start from A sharp, B, C, C sharp or D flat, D sharp or E flat, E, F, F sharp or G flat, G, G sharp or A flat, and then back to A. This is what we use to make our music. And these specific notes that we have actually are specific frequencies of sound. Okay. Now, I do not expect anyone to cram these frequencies, but let me go back to my presentation. Sorry. I do not expect anyone to cram these frequencies, but each note has a specific frequency, and moving from one note to the other. There is a formula that is used that, you could research it, you could Google it out. The thing I would want you to realize, and we can probably look at A, which is a very easy one to look at, just because its numbers are more rounded. If you look at A, you can see that A0 is at frequency 27.5. A1 is at frequency 55. That means the particle is moving 55 times per second. So that is 55 hertz. A2 is 110. A3 is 220. A4 is 440, and so on and so forth. So we are having, when I play like on this note, let me go back to this view. This is my A3, and that A3 that you are hearing is actually ringing at 220, is causing the particles in, near your ear to vibrate at 220 times per second. Okay. If I go to A4, that is now making the particles vibrate at 440 times per second. You can hear that A and that A are actually the same sound. This one just sounds higher than this one. Okay? So those are frequencies of, those are multiples of each other. We call them harmonics of each other in music. And I don't expect anyone to really cram this. You can if you are a geek, but you really don't need to cram them. You just need to understand that these frequencies are, each note is triggering a specific frequency. Okay, but these are the 12 notes that we will use in our music. When any music that we write, based on, and especially the kind of music we write here in Africa, we use the Western format, which uses these 12 notes. Other countries, I think like Arabia and maybe China, they probably tune their notes a little bit differently. We use the Western format, and these are the 12 notes that we will use. Okay, I hope you are together up to that point. If we are together, you can type in the comments and say yes, we are together. If you are lost, say you are lost, and I will probably repeat. The whole essence of the class is for us to kind of understand what we are doing. I see we have Ndisho Mbugwa who has joined us saying nice. I see Alice Nduta. Thank you so much for joining. I see Siftali Shituka. Hey, that's a hard word. He's saying this is where music becomes physics, frequencies. It's good to understand them just so that it makes your understanding of music much easier. There was a deaf pianist called Beethoven. Beethoven could not hear, but he wrote a lot of music, and all he did was that he would sense the vibrations from the piano, and that is how he wrote his music. So when you see us talking of frequencies, ideally this is what is happening. Joel Mark is saying we are together. Joyce Morioki, thank you so much for joining us. She's saying we are following. Great, we can move to the next section now. I think I've already explained about notes that have the same, multiple of frequencies are given the same name. And then, when a pitch is above the other, so like if we have a pitch of A there and we have another A there, we will say that these two are octaves of each other, okay? These two are octaves of each other. Great. So these are the 12 notes we will use to make our music. But like, I'm sure we've all studied maybe English or Swahili or maybe some language. We know that we will, once we have our alphabet, like in English, our alphabet has 26 characters. But then we come and we divide these characters between what we'll call consonants, letters like B, J, V, and the likes. And then we have what we call vowels. So we have our A, E, I, O, and U. And then we have the rules that we will say, you cannot have, two consonants together. You can't have J and X, following each other. You'll probably maybe put a vowel in between. In the very same thing, we need to dissect our 12 notes and begin to create what we call scales, okay? And a scale is just a set of notes that are systematically selected and through which music is written. So any music you hear is based off a scale. We are able now to decide which of these notes, or all these notes that we have looked at, all the 12 of them, which of these will we utilize to make our music, okay? So every piece of music is written based on a scale. We have various scales. They are very many. I have just highlighted a few. We have the major scale. We have the minor scale, and the minor scale is in 3 formats. We have what we call the natural minor, the harmonic minor, and the melodic minor. We have the pentatonic scale, we have the blues scale, we have the chromatic scale, we have the altered scale, we have the whole tone scale, we have the half, whole and whole half scale, we have the diminished scale. There are so many scales that are there in music, and we will write our music or use various concepts based on these scales. They are what guide us to make music, okay? So we will begin by looking at the major scale. Reason being, a lot of music that we write is based on the major scale, okay? A lot of music that we write is based off the major scale, and the major scale feels a happy scale. And then we will later look, in the next lesson, we will later look at the minor scale. And the minor scale kind of feels sad, okay? I'll give you an example. Normally, maybe when we've lost someone, like recently we lost our 3rd president, and if you watched the news and how the media houses were, showing what was happening, they kept playing music that felt kind of like this. So what I was playing is off a minor scale, okay? It feels sad. It feels... okay? A minor scale feels sad. But then a major scale feels happy. So if you watch, like, say, a movie, or you watch, and they have a sad scene, they probably might play music in the minor scale. And then when they want to now resolve and make you feel like, the problem has been ended, they will bring you into the major scale. And at times what they will do to make it more happier, there are things that we call modes, which is a little bit more advanced. But they will use a mode called the Lydian mode. That is more advanced music, but they will make it sound okay, just to add that happy feeling. So every music that we will write is going to be based on every music that we write or we sing is based on either on a scale. It can be the major scale, the minor scale, the pentatonic scale, the blues scale. I'm not sure anyone has written based on the chromatic scale. Maybe there are, but you will basically write music based on a type of a scale, okay? Please feel free to ask questions in case something is not clear. I will answer them as we move on, okay? So, before we look at how to create our major scale, we need to understand a principle that we call intervals, okay? And an interval we define as the distance between any two notes, okay? It's the distance that occurs between any two notes. We would want to know if I play a B note and now I play an F note. If I wanted to play the same thing, but now starting from E flat, how will I move and how will I know what the next note is? Okay, so we kind of use something that looks like the number line. I don't know, when we were in primary, we had the number line and we'd be told 1 plus 3. So we'd start, maybe A is my 1, and then we'd add 3, 1, 2, 3, and then we'd end up there. It's something very similar, okay? The interval is like a distance between any two notes. So the shortest distance between two notes that are next to each other is called a semitone. Like I think in the US, they kind of use they kind of call it a half step. In Europe, they call it a semitone. And then two semitones will create a whole tone or a whole step, okay? So from A to A sharp or B flat, that is a semitone. That is a semitone interval. From B flat to B, that is another semitone. So the distance between A to B is going to be said as a whole tone, okay? We will say that there is a whole tone distance there. I don't know whether this is showing us. No, it doesn't. So this is a whole tone distance, okay? Between A and B is a whole tone. Between B and C is a half step or a semitone. Between B and C sharp is a whole tone. So then between B and maybe D, then we will say we have 3 half steps or 3 semitones or 1.5 steps, okay? So we have half step to C, half step to D flat, and a half step to D, okay? So we use intervals to allow us to know what distance am I moving from one note to the next. We will use intervals to determine how we will create our scales. All these scales that we have here have a formula of how the notes are spaced to make your scale, okay? So for example, we will do the major scale, and for the major scale is made up of 8 notes, with the first and the eighth note being the same. To generate the major scale, we will use this formula. So W means a whole step, H means a half step, okay? Or you could call it tone and semitone, okay? So to generate the major scale, we will use whole, then half. So a whole step to the second note, a whole step to the third note, a half step to the fourth note, a whole step to the fifth note, a whole step to the sixth note, a whole step to the seventh note, then a half step back to the eighth note. Okay, so let's create a scale. For example, let's create the scale of A. So we will have our formula, a whole step between the first note to the second, a whole step between the second to the third, half step to the fourth, whole step to the fifth, whole step to the sixth note, a whole step to the seventh, and then a half to the eighth. So what I'll do is I will put our musical alphabet at the top, and let's create the A major scale, for example. Okay, so my first note is going to be A. To determine what my next note is going to be, it tells me, the formula tells me I need to move a note, a whole note away from A. So who can tell me in the comments what note we will move to? What note do you think is going to be my second note, which is going to be a whole step away from A? Anyone can type in the comments? A whole step away from A. Anyone in the comments? I see Joel saying B, Siftali saying B. Thank you very much. So a whole step is going to be B. I see Ali saying note B. Then the next one is going to be? I see Njokindongo saying B sharp. No, Njokindongo is going to be B. It's not going to be B sharp. Our musical, our musical alphabet does not have a B sharp, ideally. Okay, then the next note is going to be C sharp. I see Joel Mark saying the third note is going to be C sharp. Very correct. And then a half step from C sharp. Siftali is saying can be G2. Okay, yeah. But we are moving a whole step. Very correct, Siftali. But we are moving a whole step towards the right of the screen. We are building our note 1. We kind of move up in pitch. Okay, so you are correct. It can be G, but we are moving up in pitch. So yes, Joel Mark says the fourth note is going to be D. Very, very, very correct. And I hope you are following. So you can see my first note was A. I moved a whole step. So I moved a half step to A sharp. Then I moved a whole step to B, which gave us our second note. Then we moved a whole step from B, a half step to C sharp, a whole step to C, a half step to C, a whole step to C sharp from B. So a whole step is going to be C sharp. Then a half step, because here we need to move a half step. We move a half step to D. Good. I can see Siftali, Alice. Good. Joyce Morioki is asking, please explain how we move to C sharp. Good. Let me do that again. So remember, we have said an interval. The shortest interval is a half step, which is from any two adjacent notes. So how I have listed these notes here is that they are adjacent to each other, okay? And then after G, we'll have A, and then we continue, we repeat the cycle, okay? So from B, we are moving to a whole step, okay? So from B to C is a half step. And then from C to C sharp is a half step. So two half steps make a whole step, okay? So since from our note 2 to our note 3, we need to move a whole step, we will move two half steps, so to C sharp, to make our third note be C sharp. I hope we are together, Joyce. I hope, if you're together, you can write there, we are together, if you've understood to that point. I see everyone has moved to D, which is our fourth, which is going to be our fifth. A whole step from D. A whole step from D. Joel Mark says E, correct. And we will continue. Joy says she understands, thank you. And then a whole step from, and I see now you are with us, Joyce, yes, E. A whole step from E is going to be F sharp, and I hope you can see that. So a half step, then a whole step to F sharp. And then from a whole step from F sharp is going to be G sharp. So half whole to G sharp. And then from G sharp, a half step is going to be back to A. Okay? And that makes our entire A major scale. Now, if I play it on the keyboard, so I'll start with A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, and A. Okay? So when you listen to that, what I've played, that sounds very familiar to a song we used to sing once upon a time. We used to call it the solfa scale, or the do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. And that is created using the intervals, okay? Using our intervals, okay? We could do another scale. Let's say, for example, good. I see a question from Joyce, and Joyce is asking, so two notes do not have the sharp, which is B and E. So very, very correct. If you look at the keyboard displayed here, you will see that from A, we have a black note, which makes our A sharp. And then from A sharp or B flat, we go to B. But then you will notice that after B, we do not have a black note. We immediately go to another white note, which is C. Okay? So B will not have a B sharp. In this, let me say physically, there is no B sharp. But theoretically, and we will see in our next lesson, that there is actually a B sharp. We'll see that in the next lesson. But physically, after B, we get to C. Okay? Then we will get to C sharp, D, D sharp, E. After E, we don't have a black note there. We immediately go to F. Okay, so we do not have a black note at the between. So there's no E sharp and there is no F flat. Okay, similarly, we have no B sharp and we have no C flat physically, but theoretically they do exist, and we will look at that in our next lesson. Okay, I hope that is clear, Joyce. If anyone else has a question, please feel free to ask. Okay, so we can do another scale. Let's do C. Okay, so I have my C note here, so I will do it as I play it. Okay, so I have my C note there. Then the next one is D, which is going to be a whole tone away. Excuse me. I kind of removed the formula, but it's a whole tone again from the second to the third, which is going to give me E. It's going to be a half after the third to the fourth is going to be a half. So we have C, we have D, we have E. It's going to be a half to F. Okay, then a whole to G, then a whole to A, then a whole to B. Oh, I brought it back, and then a half step to C. Okay, and so the scale of C, as you see, the scale of C, as you see, has all notes white. Okay, so the scale of C has all notes white. So if I'm going to write a song on the scale of C, these are the notes that I will particularly use. Okay, if I create a major scale on any of these notes, all of these notes can create a major scale, and really any scale that is going to be there, whether minor, melodic minor, harmonic minor, natural minor, pentatonic, diminished scale, augmented scale, whatever scale, all of these 12 notes can create a similar scale. So in if I've just put this on a sheet, and you will see that all of these, if I play the A scale, if I play the B flat scale or the A sharp scale, if I play B, C, all 12 notes can make a scale. Okay, and so I've put them in this table, having used that formula of whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. One of the easiest ways to remember that formula is just looking at how the keys are laid on the piano. They're not very easily visible, like say on a guitar, on a trumpet, on a flute or something, but they're very, very visible on the piano. So when you look at how the piano is laid out, you can see we have a repeating pattern of 2 and 3, 2 and 3. So that kind of gives you a secret, because the scale of C is all white. So to easily remember that, you look at it as tone or whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. Okay, that's the shortcut I used when I was learning, just to remember that formula and to try and learn all 12 scales. Okay, but it's important to remember the formula: whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, or tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. That is how you create any major scale. Okay. One thing you will notice from this table is that we have, it looks a little bit funny. Like if you look at the A scale, for example, we have A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. So all the notes, all the 7 English alphabet letters are in that scale, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. But when you look at the A sharp one, which is actually wrong when I look at it from here, where? Okay, ignore the A sharp one. Here kuna makosa. Let us look at something like the C sharp scale. Please ignore the A sharp one. Wow. The C sharp one, I also make mistakes. I'm human. When you look at the C sharp scale, you can see we have C, D, then we have F, then F sharp, G sharp, A sharp. There's no B, C, C sharp, okay? If you look at another scale, like say the D sharp scale, you have D sharp, then you have F, there's no E, G, then there's a G sharp, so there are 2 G sharps. G sharp, A, then we have no B, then I'm seeing C, D, D sharp. You can see it looks a little bit unclean, whereas for something like E, for example, you can see we have all the notes: E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D sharp, E. Okay, so there is a format in which we write these scales so that all the 7 notes of the alphabet are actually in that scale. Okay, it makes it easy to write the music in that scale. Okay, so we divide these notes into 2. We'll call them, there's what we call the sharp keys and the flat keys. Okay, and we use a format that we call the key signature. Okay, if you've ever seen written music, you'll probably see things that look like this. They look very scary. You can see, looks like, I don't know what this looks like, but it looks funny. But what you will notice is that we have a formula in which we write each of these scales, okay? And this is where I want us to begin from in our next lesson, because if we go there, I might confuse people. What I would want you to do before our next lesson, I'm hoping that we can do the next lesson next Monday, same time at 7. I will ensure to start at 7, not at 7 or 10. Try and ensure that you write all these 7 scales, all the 12 scales, sorry, and don't make a mistake like I did here. This should actually be C and this should be D. Then D sharp, F, G, A, and A sharp. You can try and write all the 12 of them based off this formula: the whole, half, whole, half. Let me say that again. Based on the whole, half, whole, half. Okay? Try to write all the 12 of them. When we meet in our next class, we'll begin looking at what we call the key signature and how we now group them into this format so that then every note is going to be represented. Okay? Every note is going to be represented. And then from there, we will begin looking at creating our melodies, creating our harmonies in what we call chords. Okay? So I don't want to continue from there. It's around 8 p.m. I had hoped to stop at 8 p.m. Unless there are any questions, unless there's something that wasn't clear, you could kindly ask in the comments before we do our recap of today's class. Is there any question? I see Alice Nduta saying that was interesting. Thank you very much, Alice. Anyone with a question? Anyone would like to ask something, find out something that wasn't very clear? I don't seem to see anyone saying anything, so I'll hope everything is clear. So when you look at a recap of today's lesson, and you can be typing, if you're typing any of the comments, I'll see them. We have defined what music is, which we have said is the art of arranging sounds in time. Okay. And then we have gone on to define our basic building blocks of music. Okay. We have gone to see the physics of sound, the frequencies of sound, and we have defined our musical alphabet to have the 12 notes that are named in 7 letters of the English alphabet, but we name all the 12 pitches based on that. Some of them will be called sharp, some of them will be called natural notes. The white ones will tend to call them natural notes. Then the others will either have a sharp name to it or a flat name to it. Okay. And then we have looked at our musical scales. We have seen there are various scales. There are very, very many scales, depending on the kind of music you write. There are very many scales. We'll just look at a few in these lessons, from major scales, minor scales, pentatonic scales, augmented scales, and they're all very, very many number of scales. And we have started looking at the major scale. And so in our next lesson, we will look at what we call key signature. We will now look at music notation. How do we write music? And then we will look at the formation of harmony and the formation of chords. I guess I will see you guys in the next class. I see Joel Mark saying thank you. Looking forward to meeting in the next class. Thank you so much for coming, Joel. It's a pleasure to see you. For Alice, I think we had Joyce, we had Sipitali. Wow, Sipitali, thank you so much for joining us. Njokindongo, thank you so much. I also saw Ndisho Mbugwa. Thank you so much for joining us. And for everyone else who's going to join us in the subsequent lessons, or you're going to watch this after, thank you so much for joining us. Again, it is my joy to share the information that I have. I have been assisted today by an assistant who is hiding behind the camera. His name is Victor. Victor, just look at the camera and say hi. You can look over here and say hi. Just wave to guys in the camera. I don't know whether you can. I don't know if they can see Victor, but yeah, maybe guys can see you. I hope they can see you. And we will proceed from there next week. Thank you very much. I will proceed to end the stream, and we will see you again next week at 7 p.m. God bless you. Thank you very much.